Perhaps hundreds of miles, for even the mountains surrounding the castle. They were standing instead in a dark and overgrown graveyard, the black outline sculpture. Now, for a first few house points, can anybody name the book that extract is taken from?
Is it the second book?
It is not the second book, The Chamber of Secrets. It isn't. Any other guesses? The Seventh, the Deathly Hallows, nope, no points so far. It's from the Goblet of Fire. I'm sorry to anybody who knew that, but it's from the Goblet of Fire, of course. It's from that very memorable sequence where Harry and Cedric, they touch the Triwizard Cup, and then they're building. That is in fact a school. If you can hear some screams, that is not the sounds of liberated house elves. Those are the children at break time. It is a real working school. Could you please not take photos? Sure. Sorry, it is the one. I am going to talk about some graves at a moment, but not this particular grave here. I'm actually going to talk to you now about the things you can see behind you, up on the hill there, very prominently, Edinburgh Castle. Now, I mentioned Lord Chariot School as our real life Hogwarts. This is the other candidate here in Edinburgh. There's a very compelling reason for this. I'll get onto that at the end of the talk, because I think it's a fabulous story. But I'll tell you a little bit more about Edinburgh Castle and the Hogwarts parallels that may have inspired Hogwarts that should sort of whet your appetite a little bit. One is that every summer a huge temporary stadium is built outside of Edinburgh Castle at the entrance to it. It's got pennants on it from all of the different countries of the world, or the Commonwealth, and it hosts the Edinburgh Royal Military Tattoo, which is kind of like a sort of big sort of song, dance, fireworks, spectacular type thing. Not just with military performers, but also with like dancers, singers, musicians, that kind of thing. A sort of a huge show, but with also marching bands from the military and things like that. And it looks for all of the world like a Quidditch competition. In fact, I think personally it looks a little bit more like the Quidditch World Cup than it does like the Quidditch Cup at Hogwarts. But at that point, it really does start to turn into real life Hogwarts. The other thing is, just like Hogwarts, Edinburgh Castle did used to have a huge lake next to it. It was called the Nor Loch, or that's the North Lake. But if you have had a little wander around Edinburgh yourself and by the castle, you won't have noticed a lake anywhere near it. That's because it no longer exists. Back in the 18th century, this lake was becoming a real problem. It had been lovely for hundreds of years, but unfortunately, the population of Edinburgh was growing, and the lake was not just being used as a lake, but also being used as an open sewer. So it became rather stinky, and it was also, kind of like polluting the groundwater, drinking water people in the city of Edinburgh. And this was at the point that the new town was being built. It's fine, new sort of Georgian town. It doesn't look new to us nowadays. It looks newer than the old town where they are at the moment. This is a very posh area that Edinburgh was being built. So they decided that they would drain the North Lake to deal with this problem. And that they did. So you can no longer see it today, but you can kind of sort of visit it. Because if you go to the north, gosh, somebody's having fun. If you go to the new town today, and you have a little wander around the new town, you can enjoy a lovely afternoon of culture. You can visit the posh shops on Princes Street. You can maybe go and visit the art galleries there. You can have a delightful stroll in the Princes Street gardens. Smell those beautiful flowers. But let's just say that the reason why those flowers smell so beautiful is because our ancestors most definitely did not. The Princes Street Gardens, with its wonderful fertile soil, so good for growing those beautiful flowers, because it was all growing in. It's sort of another one of those grim stories. I'm going to leave you now, and we're going to have a little look at some graves, very relevant to our subject. Now, quite half point, whoever can spot, I think it's quite easy to spot today, nice and sunny, but it is kind of hidden away. Which name I'm going to talk about right now on one of these gravestones?
Is it Thomas Smith?
Thomas Smith? Not Thomas Smith, that's the largest name. But I love your motto. What about yourself? It's not Helen, no, it's kind of tucked away, so it is a little bit of a puzzle. But you can see over there we have Mary Turner Scrimger. Now Scrimger is one of those surnames that was used by Rowling in the Harry Potter books. Real Harry Potter fans will probably be very familiar with the name Scrimger. Maybe some of you who are here in a more supportive capacity, let's just say, maybe not so much. It's one of the more minor characters in the book, Rufus Scrimger. He took over as Minister of Magic after Cornelius Fudge. And although he's a smaller character, he does have a pretty pivotal role in the story, because he delivers to our heroes Dumbledore's final bequest. Now, can anybody, for some more house points, name any of the things that were in Dumbledore's will?
The snitch.
The snitch, the golden snitch that was given to Harry. What kind of, what house can I give those points to?
Gryffindor.
Gryffindor again! It's not a nail biter today.
The one he gives Hermione is or no, he gives Ron the flashlight.
He gives Ron
Einen
the illuminator. Gryffindor again! Maybe I should have given you that. And any others?
No.
Yes?
That was in the third movie.
I don't know if you did that.
That's right. I will give you the points again. I gave her a point for flashlight, so I'll give you the point for book. Yeah, it was Tales of Beedle the Bard. And what house can I give those points to? Gryffindor again! Okay, Gryffindor, I'm afraid, I don't think there's any catching Gryffindor at this point. And there was a fourth and final item. Can anybody remember the fourth and final item? It was in the will. Not the mirror. The sword! Right, sword of Gryffindor. You the first to answer correctly. What house can I give that to? Ravenclaw. Oh, excellent. Okay. Ravenclaw are back on the board, but Gryffindor's still very much in the lead. Yes, the sword of Godric Gryffindor was one of the things that was bequeathed. But Rufus Scrimger wouldn't hand it over because he said it wasn't Dumbledore's to give. It wasn't actually his property. But Dumbledore never really intended them to get it. It was all part of trying to tell the kids how important the sword would be to defeating Voldemort later. At this point in the tour, I'm going to introduce a little theme of double meanings. Many of the names of the surnames in Harry Potter we look at today, they have double meanings. They're like sort of little puzzles to work out in the book to clue people in to their role in the story. And this is our first of them, Scrimger. Now, with what I've just said about that sword in mind, would anybody like to try and work out, again for a few house points, what Scrimger might mean in Old Scots or Old English? Go on.
Does it mean evil?
It doesn't mean evil. I'm sorry, I want to give you some points. I keep on trying. Yeah, no, Scrimger means sword bearer or sword carrier. So it's a little sort of clue in the text that reveals what his sort of role in the story is. Now, while I've been playing for time here at the Scrimger grave, I have been putting something off. Because today we are going to have to visit the grave of none other than the Dark Lord. He who must not be named himself. So, if you would like to follow me, stick to the path, watch out for Dementors. We are going to visit Voldemort's grave. Come with me. Would you like to answer for some points? Yes, Voldemort. Which name on the grave particularly? That one! Absolutely right. Thomas Riddle. How's going to give some points for that? Ravenclaw. Excellent. Okay, Ravenclaw are back on the board. I noticed that some of you, don't worry, you'll get a chance to answer very soon. Yes, of course, we are here by the grave of Thomas Riddle, Esquire. Now, the more casual Harry Potter fans will be looking at that and going, well, you promised us the grave of Voldemort, he doesn't say Voldemort anywhere there. Well, of course, he's not buried under his Dark Lord name, he's buried under his birth name of Tom Riddle. You may also know, it's a slightly different spelling. That's the traditional spelling of the name Riddle, but of course it was changed in the books, and I have a pretty good idea why Rowling did that. So, for a few more house points, could anybody suggest why she used alternative spelling books? That's amazing! That's a brilliant, I don't know, right. So for those of you who couldn't hear, she said, so it didn't look like copyright. I don't think the name Riddle was trademarked, so that wasn't why she did it. It was a very clever idea. I'm going to give you some house points. Who was it? Slytherin! They're on the board with a sneaky, you can tell they're the lawyers in Slytherin. They got on the board with a copyright claim. Okay. That's not what I think was probably the reason. Anybody else like to have a guess why the spelling might have been changed?
You could spell out Voldemort.
Absolutely right, sir. Which house do I give that to?
Slytherin.
Slytherin! Oh, it's a Slytherin fight back. They're on 10 points now. Yes, it is, of course, to make the famous anagram, I am Lord Voldemort, Tom Marvolo Riddle work. You need exactly the right letters. Not just a difficult thing for Rowling herself, also a difficult thing, oh no, my wand! Couldn't lose that. Also a difficult thing for the translators of the Harry Potter books. Because of course the letters aren't the same in every different language. So you need to make that sentence, I am Lord Voldemort, work in different languages by giving him a slightly different name. So in France, for example, he's called Tom Elvis Jedusor. The Elvis I don't understand at all. Maybe I guess rather like Lord Voldemort. A lot of people have a problem believing that Elvis is truly dead. Maybe that's a connection, I don't know. In Denmark, they went really romantic with it. They called him Romeo in Denmark. And in Iceland, I think this is the strangest one of all. He has not such a fearsome name, he's called Trevor, which is probably a name most of us more associate with Neville's tone than the fearsome Dark Lord. Not the only interesting thing about the anagram, of course, in languages like Chinese language, there's a unique problem there when you're trying to translate, which is that the concept of anagram just doesn't exist, right? The symbols represent full words or parts of words, right, rather than letters. So the idea of an anagram is completely of a familiar to that audience. Now, in the movies, that was simple enough to solve, because what they did was they showed sort of the glowing symbols, the lines rearranged themselves to spell out I'm Lord Voldemort. So you could sort of see how it'd be constructed like that. But in the books, the Chinese translation, I think, was a little bit lazy, because all they did was they put a big asterisk, and then down at the bottom of the page, a massive footnote explaining what the concept of an anagram was for the audience who'd never heard of it before. So a little bit of a cop-out, I think, rather than translating it properly. Voldemort, of course, has another name. Voldemort. So for a few more house points, could anybody tell me roughly what Voldemort means in French? It's not a real word. But it does translate roughly to French. Any ideas? We've got some conferring here. It's like you do a challenge.
He knows a little bit of French.
Voldemort. What could that mean in French, roughly?
No pressure, Alex.
Something death. Mort, death, flight. Yes. Yes, I would have found that flight of death or thief of death, I think, is both acceptable translations.
Tell your stories. Could you move over there so other people can get to see the head skull, please?
No problem. Thank you. I don't think he's necessarily very well informed. I do have class as a tour guide in this graveyard, but nonetheless. Sorry, I will briefly finish up that little fact. Yes, Voldemort, fight of death, thief of death. Could I give some points, please? Raven. Absolutely. Great. Lovely. Now, we are going to move on a little bit, because that gentleman was requested, in order to tell you a little bit more about Voldemort. Come with me.
Yavaş yavaş. Kazanım biz.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, just to finish off a little bit. Well, to be clear, by the way, while that man works for the council, I think he's sort of making that up himself, because I have a council pass to use this graveyard and pay for that. So I think his superiors probably haven't told him to do that, and he sort of made that up. Not to mention the fact that we were about to move on very shortly. Anyway, never mind. So I just wanted to finish off a little bit by telling you a little bit about the grave and about the real-life riddles of Edinburgh. You might have noticed that there was a Thomas Riddle Jr. and Senior buried there. So just like in the books. Now, the Riddles, they were a pretty well-to-do family here in Edinburgh. You could see that they had some pretty elaborate headstones, maybe not as elaborate as these ones, but nonetheless that would be a pretty plum spot in the graveyard. They were a rich family, just like the family in Little Hangleton in the books. They were a family of Edinburgh bankers and lawyers. That's pretty much all we know historically about them. We don't seem to be particularly famous other than that. Now, since we started doing these tours so many years ago, they've become a sort of real site of pilgrimage for Harry Potter fans. Now, a lot of fans like to even, in fact, leave little sort of artifacts by the grave, little presents, particularly the Slytherin contingent. So, for example, we often get handcrafted wands left there. I almost left mine accidentally earlier, things like that. Little letters and things to the Dark Lord as well. And I think perhaps the most interesting thing about this of all is that people get married there quite a lot, particularly Slytherins. So if you might have noticed back when we were there, there was lots of confetti on the ground nearby. That's from the recent weddings that we had occurring there. Well, that's enough Voldemort for us now. So it's time that we leave this dark and gloomy graveyard. Well, actually, it's quite a nice, light and sunny graveyard today. But this spooky graveyard behind us, and head out onto the streets of Edinburgh for some more interesting Harry Potter tidbits. Come with me. Reader of the edge of the graveyard. This is to try and raise money to do recovery work, such as the kind that we saw going on in the graveyard today. It's totally unrelated to me. I don't get anything from this. I will ask for a separate tip at the end of the talk. But if you want to give them just £1, and I'll certainly be doing it, tap your card on the reader, and it will give them £1 to contribute towards those works and maintaining the graveyard for future visitors. When you're ready, follow me. We're going to meet back on the streets outside where we were at the beginning, and then I think it's time for a little bit of magic. In just a moment, a little change of traffic place will allow us to go. I can assure you, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. 1, 2, 3, Rossio Lumos. It already worked on this occasion. Come across. Let's try it again here. 1, 2, 3. Rossio Lumos.
Lumos.
Perfect.
Ama Ivan, Ivan. Amoy awan ang nawa.
Coming nice and close here in the back, folks. It's a noisy location, so it really helps my voice. Thank you very much indeed. Lovely stuff. Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, witches, wizards, everybody, behind me you can see the Potter shop. Ooh. Absolutely nothing to do with Harry Potter. This is one of the locations where we know this is not where the name came from, for sure. We're in a place in Edinburgh called Potter Row. This is where obviously all of the Potters used to ply their trade back in the day. The reason why we know that this isn't where the name Harry Potter came from, even though there are J.K. Rowling connections in this place, and I'll get onto that in a moment, the reason why we know it's not where the name originated was we know where the name Potter came from. That was because, well, I'll tell you what, actually, we've got some very keen fans here who seem to know their stuff. So would anybody like to guess where the name Potter, surname Potter came from in Rowling's history? No, nobody knows that one? That's absolutely fine. She used to have some childhood friends. She lived in a village when she was younger and used to play with Ian and Vicky Potter, a brother and a sister. And apparently this name, according to her, just sort of stuck in her head. She always meant to use it as a story, and so years later it became the name of her hero. Now, many years later, of course, that was when she created Harry Potter. The Harry part of it, that, she said, that came apparently simply from her favourite boy's name. And sure enough, when J.K. Rowling did have a baby boy of her own, she named him David. I suppose the name Harry had already been taken at that point. It would have been a little bit weird to reuse it. The Rowling connection here is that this is the central campus of the University of Edinburgh. Rowling did attend university here in Edinburgh. She trained to be a teacher here. That was back in the 90s. That was her backup plan in case the writing didn't work out. In fact, she did actually get a teaching degree from the University of Edinburgh. She never had to use it for obvious reasons. Books took off. She was also awarded an honorary degree from the University of Edinburgh in 2008 for her services to children's literature. And these degrees would have been awarded here in the McEwen Hall, this grand building given to the University of Edinburgh by McEwen, who was sort of like a local politician and brewer. You can still see McEwen's beer today. And so that's where that sort of majestic building comes from, and that's where all of the students at the university, myself included, graduate from. Now, I introduced earlier this little theme of double meanings in names, and I've got a couple more interesting ones for you after we move on. So when you're ready, come follow me. We'll find somewhere a little bit quieter, and then I'll show you, well, firstly I'm going to tell you some interesting facts about those names, and then I'm going to show you the location in Edinburgh that I believe above all others counts as the birthplace of Harry Potter, the place where J.K. Rowling first started to write the books, her favourite character. Come with me.
Ivan, agada bajos de bro, Ivan. Bro, me neigrim Ivan.
A few more houses points, maybe unseat Gryffindor, although at this stage of the competition I think it might be quite unlikely. So the first is the name Dumbledore. Another name with a double meaning I almost said. Now, Dumbledore, that sounds like a made-up word, but it's a real word. It's a real Old English word. So for 5 extra house points, anybody like to guess what Dumbledore might mean in Old English? No? Never mind. Oh, you want to have a guess, don't you? Come on, let's hear it. It's going to be funny. You change your mind, okay. No, it doesn't. Yeah. It means bumblebee in Old English. And apparently the reason why he's called Dumbledore is in Bumblebee. He's Rowling kind of imagined him sort of bumbling around the corridors of Hogwarts, humming to himself, very fond of music, very distracted, sort of, you know, it's just an onomatopoeic word that kind of gets across the character of Professor Dumbledore. The other one that I find very interesting indeed is Remus Lupin. Now, this is for some easy house points. Anybody know what lupin means in Latin? Who said that? Excellent. Who are the points to? Oh, of course they are. Sorry about that, non-Gryffindor competitors. Yeah, so lupin, it means wolf in Latin, so it's a little bit of a clue that Remus Lupin is going to turn into a werewolf, or going to be revealed to be a werewolf. But the really interesting thing for me, when you go a bit deeper, is that the Remus part is all connection. So again, for a few more half points, anybody know the story of Romulus and Remus? Anybody know this? Could you tell me? You seem quite a scholar. Could you tell me the story of Romulus and Remus? Absolutely right. The legendary foundation of Rome. The ancient Romans used to believe that their city was founded by twin brothers called Romulus and Remus, who were abandoned at birth. And the wolf connection is that they were nursed by a she-wolf who adopted them. So really, when you look at it, Remus Lupin is like sort of saying wolf, wolf. The clues are there in plain sight as to what is going to happen to Remus Lupin in the books. Again, sorry about the spoilers, but you know, it's a Harry Potter story. Now, the Harry Potter location around here is at the end of this street. Can you see that grey building on the first floor there, or the second floor if you're American? You see the grey building on the corner, right? That is now a Chinese restaurant. It used to be called the Nicholson Street Cafe. It's changed hands quite a lot over the years. And the Nicholson Street Cafe was owned by J.K. Rowling's brother-in-law. So when she first moved to Edinburgh, remember I was saying earlier, when she came to Edinburgh to live near her sister Diane, when she first moved here, she used to frequent that cafe a great deal, and this was where a great deal of the first Harry Potter book was written. Four small half points. Anybody like to suggest why Rowling liked to work in cafes so much?
People watch.
Absolutely right. That's Gryffindor again, isn't it? So I remember by now. I'm just not going to ask anymore. I'm just going to say 5 points to Gryffindor, 5 points to Gryffindor, 5 points to Gryffindor. Yes, people watching, getting caffeinated. She just loves cafes. The kind of trick question with gotcha is a lot of times people say it was because she was so cold, right? She actually was quite struggling, you know, when she moved here to Edinburgh to begin with. She was a single mother. For a time she had to claim state benefits, welfare. So this sort of rags to riches story was very compelling. But we think the whole thing about her being really cold and working in cafes to try and escape her cold flat was put about by the British tabloid press, because Rowling later said, "I'm not so stupid to move to Edinburgh in midwinter without any heating." So I don't think it was so much that she couldn't afford to heat her flat at home, but it was rather, you know, it was a great place to concentrate on your work, to people watch. She used to rock her baby daughter Jessica with one hand while writing with the other. A lovely story indeed. And like I say, that particular cafe, that to me is the birthplace of Harry Potter, because it was her favourite writing cafe when she first moved to Edinburgh. In a moment, we're going to see another cafe that calls itself the birthplace of Harry Potter. That's not quite true, but I'll get onto that in a moment. I think it's time that we proceed, and I'm going to go skip right from the start of the Rags and Riches story, from the writing in cafes to quote-unquote get out of the cold, to the richest part of it, the ending, the final chapter of Harry Potter being written. I'll talk about that in a moment. So follow me.
Bajo. Ha? Akan lagay ko mga ko eh.
Hey, Franco.
Let's go.
Not even.
Baik, tahu.
لولا جادة
Azam, azam.
We stood outside the National Museum of Scotland. There is a Harry Potter link here. I'll talk about that in a moment. But the actual location I really want to talk about now, unfortunately it's one we can't visit because it's just a little bit too far to walk on the tour, but you can go and visit it yourself if you want. If you head down to the end of that street and then you walk along that street past the railway station, you'll eventually find a huge grand hotel called the Balmoral Hotel. And this is where the final chapter of Harry Potter was written. Back in 2007, J.K. Rowling had sequestered herself for 6 months at the Balmoral Hotel. She sort of rented out a suite. Obviously, she was very wealthy at this time and could afford to do it, in order to try and write without distractions, to finally finish the final chapter of her grand series. And she managed it. On 11th of January 2007, in the evening, was when she finished penning the final words of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. And so the very first thing she did then was decided to celebrate. She ordered from room service a massive bottle of champagne, and I believe that she drank every drop, because her next act was to commit an act of heinous vandalism. She picked up a statue, a marble bust in the room of the Greek god Hermes, and wrote on it, J.K. Rowling finished the last chapter of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows here, room 552, on 11th of January 2007, scribbled all over it. Now, when I vandalise a hotel room, I get a massive bill. When J.K. Rowling does it, they jack up the prices. And so, overnight, she was paying about £500 a night for this suite back in 2007, which is, to be fair. So it's already pretty pricey, but they immediately doubled the prices. They added a few little Harry Potter themed flourishes around the room. It's not like sort of a full-on theme. There are a few little magical touches. They rechristened the room 552 3/4, if you see what I did there. Called it the J.K. Rowling suite. And yeah, started charging a lot more to stay there. Now, the interesting thing is, we occasionally on this tour get people who are staying there, and they come and give us little updates on the latest pricing. Last summer, we had a couple, a young couple. They weren't rich or anything. I think this was their holiday of a lifetime. They were staying there and it was costing them £3,000. But breakfast was included, so perhaps that makes it more reasonable. I don't know. If any of these prices, by the way, sound like they're reasonable to you, I will be taking tips at the end of the tour, so you can spread some of the reasonableness around. But certainly, I think that really shows, shines in stark contrast this is a real rags to riches tale. You've gone from eking out a living as a single mother, trying to train as a teacher, hoping your book will take off, to these £3,000 a night suite just for the mere association with you. Amazing stuff. Now, the National Museum of Scotland, a wonderful museum, and talking about money, this is absolutely free. I would really recommend going and visiting the National Museum of Scotland, and it does have one little Harry Potter link. Now, none of the Harry Potter movies were filmed in Edinburgh. A lot of people, unfortunately, if they're not real sort of Harry Potter nuts, they come on this tour and they think we're going to show them like filming locations. Unfortunately, none of it was filmed here, so we can't. But there is one movie link, and that's inside the museum. There's an artifact there called the Lewis Chessmen. This is a very ancient chess set, the oldest ever found in Scotland, one of the oldest in the world, with these very distinctive pieces. And that featured in one of the Harry Potter movies for a few house points. What movie did the Lewis Chessmen feature in? The Philosopher's Stone. Who can I award the points to? Hufflepuff! They're on the board with 5 points. Yeah, of course, everybody knows in the Philosopher's Stone, there's a bit at the end where they play wizard chess. It's not that chess set though. It's earlier in the movie when Ron is teaching Harry how to play wizard chess. You can see that the pieces are based on the Lewis Chessmen, who have this like sort of very distinctive design. It's a really cool thing to go and have a look at, and the whole museum is cool. Yeah?
I thought it was the bit when before Harry was fighting against Voldemort. First, before that.
It wasn't that bit. It was the bit where he was learning to play chess. So that was a good guess. Cool. Now, folks, I think we're going to move on. And I mentioned earlier that there is another cafe in Edinburgh that claims to be the birthplace of Harry Potter. Like I say, I think it's somewhat arguable. I'll tell you more about that, but I'll show you more about that. I'll tell you a few stories about that location as we move on. Come with me.
Sada. Walker set today. I will see you.
What's that? What's that?
يعني هالكوفي شافتك كذا كلمة جماعة هذا من
Pinch minute.
Bobby's coffee.
It's our pinch minute car away.
Jama.
Which is why to the last pinch minute car away. That's it. Imagine tour Edinburgh.
Huh?
Tour Edinburgh, ma.
What they got?
Away.
Huh?
يعني هو بي هو هونيا airplane street ها
With this location, you can come in really nice and close. It's a bit of a tight squeeze, as well, I'm afraid. Can you come right round in a circle and come in nice and close and leave a little bit of space for people at the back? I'm sorry this one's a little bit of a tight squeeze, but so it goes. Now, I'm not talking about this church behind us, I'm talking about this over here, the Elephant House Cafe. Now, this was a cafe here in Edinburgh that markets itself for a very long time as being the birthplace of Harry Potter. Like I mentioned, that's maybe stretching the truth a little bit. The reason why I know that's stretching the truth a little bit is because it wasn't opened when the Philosopher's Stone was being written. But it was opened when between the second and the fourth books were being written. And a great deal of the second, third and fourth books were written in there. So because they put the birthplace in inverted commas, Rowling said, "I'll let them have it," and so shall we. It was indeed probably Rowling's favourite cafe in Edinburgh at that time. She had a favourite table even in the cafe, which she would sit at, and that would overlook the graveyard we've just visited in the back, which is another reason why we think that a lot of inspiration probably came from that graveyard. It has become something of a pilgrimage site for Harry Potter fans over the years, and they used to add their own little sort of customizations to it. With the permission of the owner, I should point out, unlike J.K. Rowling, they would put graffiti in the toilets, saying things, you know, like kind of their thoughts about the books, little quips, jokes, prayers, wishes, that kind of thing. One wag even drew an arrow pointing to the toilet and wrote, "This way to the Ministry of Magic," which I think is a particularly good gag, if a little bit puerile, but it appealed to me anyway. You can see, unfortunately, that it's not open at the moment. This is because a couple of years ago there was a fire in the building that gutted it, and they've not been, for safety reasons, they've not been able to reopen it yet. They are hoping to do that eventually. As it says awaiting reparo on it, and you can visit another location that they've opened nearby on Victoria Street, which we'll be visiting in just a minute. A nice little contribution to the short ride anyway. So you will be able to go to the Elephant House and visit that today on Victoria Street if you do so desire after the tour. Well, I think it is almost time to move on to our final location. But one more thing about the writing in cafes. I said the second to the fourth books were written, quite a lot of them in the Elephant House, but not the fifth, sixth or seventh. Rowling eventually had to stop her cafe writing habit. Would anybody like to suggest why? Go on.
Is it too noisy and annoying?
I'm going to give you that. It was too noisy. Which house can I give those points to?
Ravenclaw.
Ravenclaw. Okay. Now I've had to sort of stretch that a little bit to give you that. Let's just say it was the noise of the throngs of fans asking her for autographs that was part of the problem. She didn't mind the fan blush, of course, but it kind of, you know, that was something that really sort of put her off writing. The other thing was journalists, and this she hated, because they would come up to her, they would always be trying to, like, you know, get the latest scoop on what was going in the next Harry Potter book. They'd be looking over her shoulder, trying to find out about her or what she was writing, and things like that. She hated the British tabloid press so much that she immortalised them in one of the books as a character. So again, a few more points for it. Anybody like to guess which character? Rita Skeeter, absolutely right, the sleazy journalist. Which house can I give points to? Ravenclaw. You know what, there may actually be a bit of a fight in this, because Ravenclaw are on 30 and Gryffindor are on 45. So it is within 3 points. I don't know if we've got 3 points left in the tour, but it's going to be quite a photo finish anyway. Well, I think it's time we move on. I'm going to show you the real life Diagon Alley. Come with me.
Bobby's. What's over there, Bobby's? Bobby Town. Bobby Town. Yeah, man. Oh, Bobby's cafe.
أنا حد هنا ساعة whatever. All right. Oh, it's really nice and close, as I always say. Thank you so much. We're almost at the end of the tour now, but
Welcome to the real-life Diagon Alley, which you can see behind us. This is Victoria Street. This is not one of it's not the only place in the UK with claims to be the real-life Diagon Alley. The Shambles in York is a very sort of crooked street that probably inspired the look of the film set. Leadenhall Market in London, if you visit there, you can see the entrance to the Leaky Cauldron, as used in the films. But here in Edinburgh, this has always been our real-life Diagon Alley. It's the one that locals say inspired the books. Now, I should say, in the interest of accuracy, that Rowling did recently take to Twitter and claim that she wasn't inspired by this street. However, what Rowling writes on Twitter nowadays tends to be a lot of boggers. So I would make your own minds up as to whether that's sort of sour grapes or not. Certainly, she would have been up and down this street all the time and would have been very aware of it when she first moved to Edinburgh. So I think no matter what the author says, some of that inspiration probably seeped in. The parallels between this street and Diagon Alley are also absolutely fascinating. We have lots of Diagon Alley equivalents here. For example, we have our own Flourish and Blocks. There's John Kane's, an antiquarian bookshop down there. We used to have a Weasley's Wizarding Wheezes, the joke shop at the bottom. You can see that because there's like a sort of big, you know, like a sign, like a big sort of Groucho Marx disguise, you know, the big nose and the glasses out there. They made them keep that sign because it was so locally famous, even after they shut the joke shop down and turned it into a clothes shop. I believe that the joke shop shut down because local school children, unfortunately, were pilfering too much stuff from it, so they went out of business, and nowadays it's a clothes shop. You can still see the sign. The owner even had a bit of a sense of humour about the whole Harry Potter connection. They put up a sign inside saying, J.K. Rowling never visited this shop, which I thought was quite an amusing way of acknowledging it. We've got our own Leaky Cauldron. We've got the White Hart Inn, one of the oldest pubs in Scotland, down at the bottom in the Grassmarket. There used to be, and again until very recently, a broom shop here on Victoria Street. Now, they've gone out of business. I don't think that brooms are big business in the 21st century, but for a while they sort of held on. If you could ask questions at the end of the tour, I will absolutely answer anything you want to ask. Right now, so yeah, like I say, there's a broom shop here, so you can pick up your own firebolt. There is a museum here, which is free, but also kind of like sells lots of Harry Potter and fantasy-related souvenirs and things like that. You can get a photo of the dragon and stuff like that. That's pretty good. The new location of the Elephant Cafe here as well. So it really is like the real-life Diagon Alley. There are so many parallels. Before we end today, though, I'm going to talk a little bit more about a couple of Potter locations that unfortunately we can't visit. Again, just a little bit too much walking, but I'll tell you how to get to them in case you're interested. If you head to the top of this road here, then you go right down that long street with the Royal Mile that links Holyrood Palace at the bottom with Edinburgh Castle at the top. Go down there a little bit and you'll find the City Chambers on the left. There you can see Joanne Rowling's handprints in the stone. In 2008 she was awarded the City of Edinburgh Award, which is kind of like the local equivalent of the Hollywood Walk of Fame or something like that. So if you want to go and take a photo with your hands in hers, you can do that down there. And then if you head on the other direction, if you go left and up that hill, you'll find Edinburgh Castle, which we were talking about earlier. And I mentioned that there was one more Potter link that to me makes Edinburgh Castle the real life Hogwarts, because for one day back in 2005 it really did become the real life Hogwarts. This was when The Half-Blood Prince was just about to be published, and Bloomsbury ran a competition, the competition of a lifetime for some lucky children. What they had to do was they had to submit an essay on what Harry Potter meant to them, and the winners won this incredible prize. The day before The Half-Blood Prince was due to finally be released, they were put into golden carriages at the bottom of the Royal Mile, drawn by kestrels, well, by horses that were made to look like kestrels, but we call them kestrels, and were drawn up the Royal Mile to Edinburgh Castle at the top, where they were invited into the Great Hall, because Edinburgh Castle, just like Hogwarts, also has a Great Hall, and this Great Hall had been really turned into the Hall at Hogwarts. They got the starry sky and everything like that. They transformed the place. The kids were sat down and then they were given a beautiful banquet full of dishes inspired by Harry Potter, so they got to have a great feast as well. And then, at the stroke of midnight, from a secret passage emerged none other than J.K. Rowling herself. She sat down on a golden throne, bit of an ego on her, and then she began to read to them the first chapter of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This was the first time anybody outside the publishers or Rowling herself had read it or heard it ever, on the stroke of midnight, just as the books were being released all throughout the world. What a wonderful, amazing experience for writing an essay and winning that competition. And that story, and many of the stories that I've told on the tour today, I think go to show a few things. So there's that story of the competition winners, there's the story of the writing of Harry Potter, the story of Harry Potter itself and the triumph over Lord Voldemort, even the story of poor William McGonagall, who wanted to be a famous poet and is. He achieved his ambitions, even if it wasn't the way he thought of initially planned it to go. I think all of those stories show that with a lot of hard work, determination, perseverance, and let's be honest, with a little bit of luck, or perhaps we can call it magic, anything is possible. Ladies, gentlemen, witches, wizards, muggles, friends of all descriptions, thank you. Now that's almost the end of the tour, that is the end of the tour, but don't worry, I haven't forgotten the all-important house competition. Let's have a look at the results today. Who could have won? It wasn't a nail-biter today, I'll be honest. We have, in 4th place, Hufflepuff. Sorry, Hufflepuff. Taking part in the counts. Give Hufflepuff a round of applause. Then we have, in 3rd place, with 10 points, Slytherin. Round of applause for Slytherin, please. We have, in 2nd place, Ravenclaw. 30 points. Pretty good, pretty good. And I'm afraid way out in the lead. Dumbledore isn't going to have to even award them some last-minute points this time. We have Gryffindor, Rayburn with 45 points. Round of applause for Gryffindor, and thank you all very much for taking part in that. A couple of more orders of business before I formally end the tour and let you leave. No, you can leave whenever you want. I will be standing over nearby to take any card payments you want to give with my magical wizard device, and also to answer any questions you may have. This is not contingent on payment or anything like that. I am very much here to help you. But if you do fancy giving me a donation, like I said at the beginning of the tour, these tours, if they were ticketed, they cost anything between £15 and £25. We think it's a much fairer, nicer model to run this sort of pay what you want model. So if you fancy chucking some money in the hat, that would be absolutely very, very welcome. Anything along those guidelines is very welcome, but if you can't afford that, or you don't want to give it, or whatever you want, that is also absolutely fine. I'm just going to pass that around now. Could I begin with you? If you can start passing that around, people. That would be excellent. And yes, like I say, I'll be standing over the card. And then the final thing you can do that would really help us out is leave us a nice review. TripAdvisor or Google. If you enjoyed the tour today and you want to leave a review, please make it 5 stars. If you enjoyed it, my name is, as the scarf says, Wizard Stu. If you didn't enjoy it today, my name is Wizard Colin, so remember that. And that, everybody, is pretty much the end of the tour. So if I can have one final round of applause for all of yourselves. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end. Thank you.